Do you ever feel stuck? The alarm goes off and you think, is this really my life? Do you wish you could douse your relationships or your career or even your business with rocket fuel and throw a match on it? End the blah once and for all. They either launch or they burn up and you get to start over. I've been there and I see you. I'm Ben Walters, an entrepreneur, pastor, coach, and consultant. If you're ready to get unstuck and ignite your super pumped life or business, I'll give you the rocket fuel and the match. All you have to do is light it. Are your dreams big enough, or are you thinking too small and playing life too safe? Before you answer this question, on this podcast, I want to introduce you to a teacher who touched thousands of lives, including my own, during a 28-year career teaching high school government. I want to introduce you to a politician who grew up to become mayor of his hometown and brought an NFL franchise, the NCAA football national championship, a Super Bowl, and numerous companies to his city. And I want to introduce you to a humanitarian who forged a unique sister city program with foreign nations and lifted up families with disabilities and families struggling with memory care issues. Now, this isn't three separate people. It is one person, the most impactful Arizonan of all time, former mayor, former state senator, former U.S. congressman, and my former government teacher in high school, humanitarian Harry Mitchell. Welcome, Harry.
Well, thank you, Ben. Glad to be here.
I'm glad you joined us. As we think about this program and just people living super pumped lives and lives of meaning and lives that are impactful, I thought of you because of the great impact you've had in so many different areas. And so one of the things I wanted to do was kind of just ask you sort of your thought process along the way, because you built up this incredible life's work worth of meaning, but yet it happened kind of one step at a time. So I wanted to sort of break that down for the listeners in the hopes that it gives them inspiration that they can do that too. So I wanted to start with why you chose to go into teaching. I mean, you're a smart guy. You could have done a lot of things. Why teaching?
Well, first of all, I graduated with a liberal arts degree. So when you do that,
Okay.
What can you do there? But
Okay.
I was driving a school bus when I was in school, my couple last years of college, and then even as a graduate student. And I really enjoyed the students I had. And
Okay.
my wife was a teacher, and she was really enjoying it. And I said, I think I love government. I said, I think I would enjoy teaching that. So I had to go back and get certified to teach. That was another year. And then there were no jobs in those days. And
Oh, really?
so I worked on my master's, and then I was driving a school bus all that time. And when I applied for a job at Tempe High, I told him I could do everything. I can drive a bus, I can coach, I can teach, like or whatever. And I went to Tempe High. That's where I graduated from. So I felt very comfortable. First of all, I think what's important is I did enjoy it. I think I had a great teaching career. Maybe I was at the right time, the right place, but it was very enjoyable. And I think if you don't enjoy what you're doing, you got to get out. And there are teachers, as you well know, that probably should have gotten out. They stayed in because of the insurance or whatever it may be. But I have to tell you, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I enjoyed the subject. That's the other thing. I enjoyed the subject and the teaching. So I think more importantly than anything is that you got to enjoy what you're doing.
Okay. That makes sense. So the first piece is to find something you enjoy, something you're passionate about, and then you'll be able to make some money doing it. It sounds like is what you're
and let me tell you, the other thing, how I got interested in government was my grandfather lived a block away from me when I was growing up in Tempe. And he was in the state legislature. And he would get me out of school, and I'd spend the day with him. And so then I got old enough to drive, and I drove him at night to meetings. And I said, this is really neat. So when I ran for office, I wasn't mad at anybody. I didn't have an axe to grind. I just thought that would be an enjoyable thing to do. And that's what I studied in college, political science. And I enjoyed all of it.
Wow.
So I have to say that I was influenced really in the area of government through my grandfather.
Okay.
So I'm sure there's everybody out there has got somebody who's kind of influenced them one way or another.
Yeah, that makes a mentor of sorts.
Exactly. And so I really I have to say that I enjoyed the subjects when I was teaching it. I enjoyed the subject when I studied it, and then I enjoyed teaching. And I think you got to have fun. When I say enjoy it, you got to have fun doing it. And we didn't always stick with the subject. I remember some kid told me so much later on, who had me earlier in the day, and he would tell his students, just get him off the subject, get him talking about the city of Tempe, and it'll take all day. Then it'll take the whole period. So you have to enjoy what you're doing, and you can catch up. All of these things I was teaching too. I wasn't making political science out of people. They had to take the course to graduate, and I understood. So, that was.
And one of the things as a student I appreciated about your course was that we had to attend a certain number of city council meetings. And I remember as the semester went on, there were more and more students at those council meetings, which you saw from the other side of the bench as mayor and council member. But that really did give me a good introduction to how the wheels of government work. Whereas I think so many people teach government and you never see it up close and personal. So I appreciate that aspect of your teaching in more of a holistic curriculum. So thank you for that.
Maybe I was doing to students what my grandfather did for me.
Yeah, very true.
And I know people would enjoy going to the meetings. Maybe not, but it didn't matter. I said somewhere along the line, you may have to go to a city council meeting, whatever city you're going to go to. And you get a feel of how it's like.
Yeah, that's right. It could be a zoning issue in your specific neighborhood, or you're trying to get a project through as a business owner, or a church that needs a parking variance. There's a number of reasons why you could end up there. So that was helpful. Yeah, that's very helpful. I also remember you had a program where the high schools, and it wasn't just our high school, but it was all the high schools, kind of took over each of the roles in city government for a day. And they sort of shadowed the person who was in that chair. So there was, a student mayor, a student fire chief, a student police chief, a student city manager. And I remember that being really impactful as well. So tell me a little bit about that. Was that sort of the same thinking, that you would get some mentorship and just introduce kids at a formative age to the wheels of government? Or how did you come up with that idea?
I didn't want them to be afraid of the people in government, because they went up. Sometimes I would even ask the students, how many people have ever met the president? No hands. How many of your congressmen? No hands. Then how many of you met the mayor? And half the people were asleep.
They were like, oh, wait, that's you. Oh, that's good. So then I was looking at your biography, and it was only you were 30 when you decided to run for Tempe City Council. So at that time, you had a wife, you had, I think, some young family, right? What prompted you to say, I want to serve beyond just this teaching career at Tempe High? What prompted that?
Well, there was a fellow teacher. We started teaching the same day. And I always told him, I would like to run for something sometime. I think that's what I would really like to do. So one day he came to me and he says, Harry, there's a city council race coming up, and I think you ought to run. And I said, oh, Chuck, I don't think so. I said, I don't think this is the right time. And he said, if you don't run now, I'll never help you. So,
really?
Yeah. So we got in the car, we went down, and I picked up petitions. And I said, Marianne, I'm going to run for the city council. And she said, well, what's that? And I said, I don't know. I've never been to a council meeting. And but that was really helpful. I had a friend who was supporting me every way, and my wife. I'd say I could have done it without her. You got to have a partner that feels as passionate, and she enjoyed it. She was a teacher too, and she ended up at Tempe High. We were both teaching there, and she enjoyed all the things everything we did. I have to say, she enjoyed as well.
Wow, that's awesome.
It didn't drag her in anything.
I was going to say that's a bold move as a husband to ask for forgiveness and not permission by just saying, I picked up petitions to do this.
Yeah.
I like
Maybe
it.
Talked about it. I don't know. About running for something.
Yeah. Sure. So were you scared? Like, how did you feel? I mean, I know you got encouragement, but in terms of just there's a fear factor in putting your name on a ballot out there in the world. Tell me a little bit about that and how you got over that fear and how you managed that fear.
Well, I was scared because all the incumbents are running, plus a whole bunch of other people, because there was a lot of issues about zoning. And I always tried to avoid some of the conflicts when I was speaking. But you're right, I was scared. And but also, I thought about this. I think anybody who's successful at all, you got to have some ego. And I think politicians all have some ego. Because you could lose. What if you lose? It's wow.
Right.
That's crushing. I have lots some too, by the way.
I've seen that. So not a lot though. You've won way more than you've lost. But
that's true. That's true. But I have to tell you, you were scared. But more you went along, when I decided to run for mayor after being a councilman, I said, I can do that. I got confidence all the time, every year, every meeting. And I finally got to say, I can do the mayor's job. I can do as good as that. So I think you get your confidence built up by doing some of this stuff.
Sure. Well, and so you were on council 2 terms before you decided to run for mayor. Is that
8 years.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. And you felt by that point you'd learned enough on council to feel confident that you could do what the mayor did?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But you had an incredible vision for Tempe, and I was just thinking back to all the things. So you served for 16 years, 4 terms as mayor, with the 8 years before.
Yeah, actually, it was 8 years because they were 2-year terms.
Okay,
they're 4 years.
8. Wow,
elections.
So it was 8 2-year terms. Wow, that is a lot of winning. That is a lot of winning. But over those years, I mean, the things that happened, and I was back with my wife and kids a couple of years ago, and we stayed in downtown Tempe at a Westin property, and they just absolutely love downtown Tempe. And I tried to explain to them, I said, this wasn't always this way. I said, I know the visionary who had the vision to make this happen. I said, this was seedy biker bars, and it was triple X movie theaters, and it was not a lot of things families would make as a destination spot. And yet, yeah, that too. And yet you had a vision for something much bigger for the city. Do you want to share about just kind of how you got that vision for what downtown Tempe could be and how you took it from what it was to what it became now?
I think it's because I was raised there. I had paper routes that were downtown. I was downtown all the time. And I just it was a different time when I was there. And I said, it gotten so far from that I said, we've got to, I said, people, we didn't have any PR people. I said, people like living in Tempe. Maybe they don't like downtown, but they like living in Tempe. And I said, one of my jobs is to make people excited about being in Tempe and bring back the stuff. And all cities go up and down. The history of cities is we've been dumps and we've been very successful. And we were lucky. We had a great staff too. And I listened to the staff. They're the ones that helped. I have to tell you, they're the ones that helped with the vision. They're all professional, and they helped me. I listened to them.
That's smart. Would you say some leaders miss that mark in terms of the ego you talked about with a lot of politicians where they think they know everything and they don't lean on people that are part of their staff and part of their team?
And those are the ones you see get in trouble. It was, I was very proud to be an elected official because I guess I was concerned about my reputation too. As a teacher, as a politician, you get concerned what people think. And some people don't, they think they're above all that. In Arizona recently, there were some legislators who got stopped for speeding. And because our Constitution says you can't give them a ticket or arrest them while the legislature is in session. So they used that as an excuse. Well, then they tried to take that out, and it failed.
Wow.
How can you believe that? Everybody who gets, if you deserve it, you get stopped and you pay the fine and you go to
Right.
Over school, whatever it is.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. So how did you build a coalition of, I mean, you had to develop downtown Tempe. You had to have business on your side, but you also seemed to be able to have the arts community as well as the residents and the homeowners and the taxpayers. How did you bring all those folks together toward this common vision? Because that seems to be a lost art more and more in our current political climate. So how did you bring folks together?
I listened to them.
Okay.
And I told them what I thought we should do. And there were people who wanted to do the arts. There were people who wanted to redevelop. You know, I found a quote the other day from one of my heroes when I was in high school, the movie star, James Dean. I mean, I even wore the same jacket that he had in Rebel Without a Cause. And he says, he says, the gratification comes in the doing, not in the results. And I enjoyed seeing some of the things that were happening, and it resulted in good things. But
interesting.
Yeah, it's not just looking at the end. Did you enjoy doing it? And the same thing.
Well, I'm sure. Yeah, and I'm sure you can remember each step of the way, both with people as well as with projects, where you think, oh, we added that building first, and we changed this second, and we widened this street or narrowed this street, and we piece by piece you built it.
Yeah, and we had problems at first because the river flowed. It cut people off too.
Right.
And some of the stuff we wanted to do originally didn't happen. America West Airline came in and saved us in a way because they just were starting. And we had these empty buildings downtown that we built that we thought everybody was going to come, but the river stopped all the traffic coming across the river into Tempe. And they took up, and I said, we can do whatever you need. And we did it. And then sometimes I would have to say, I knew I didn't have the authority, and I would go sometimes to the council and say, look, I need your help. You know, I didn't think I should have done that. We should have done this, but I don't think I had the power. So I need your help. And I talked them into it. So sometimes it was just lucky.
Well, I don't think it was just, I don't believe it was just luck, because the other thing I was thinking about was you were a Democrat who was kind of, Arizona was Barry Goldwater country when you came in, and then it was sort of the Reagan Bush years during most of your time as mayor. So how did you reach across the aisle to get these projects done? Because we don't see a lot of that today. Everything lines up on partisan lines, and yet you seem to had a way to be able to bring everybody along.
Well, I think I listened to people. Some people thought I was a Republican, you know.
Really?
And aside from being a teacher, some people thought I was an attorney, you know. So so I just played along with all of it, you know. I spoke to different groups, and I realized what group I was talking to. You know, I would talk to the Republican Men's Club, the Republican Women's Club, and I would talk about all the good things we wanted to do and we're doing. And again, a lot of that, I have to say, we had a terrific staff, and you listen to them, and then they become more bold also.
Sure.
So we were lucky. I was. You know, one of the things about listening, and I really believe this, is we all practice, but we don't think about it. We practice improv. And the rule of improv is you don't say no. You just say yes and, or you go along. And let me tell you, that's what I really learned helping with Alzheimer's. Because, you know, you're never going to win an argument. You're never going to convince somebody. Whatever it happens to be, you say you agree with. Because my favorite motto later, that's when I was a caregiver, was what difference does it make anyway? What if it is fits or if it's not true? What difference does it make?
Right.
And so
that's very true.
I was taking my wife, because I'm on their board now, to a day program for Alzheimer's. And I was bringing her home, and she was just sitting there in the car driving. And I finally said, Marianne, what happened next? So she started jabbering away. And I just kept talking. We talked all the way home. I have no idea what it was about, but we practiced that. You know, we're doing that now. We have somewhat of a program, but it's we go from topic to topic. And you just have to practice that. And then you have to be patient. when you're doing improv. I
Sure.
think I read a quote the other day from Jerry Steinfeld, who says, when you interrupt, you stop listening.
Very true.
And so you let people finish whatever they're saying. One of the ways I got out of people who were really upset with me on a phone or something, I'd always say, you may be right. I didn't say you're right. I said, you may be right. Well, let's shut them up. They don't know what to say then. Never go from there. Or we're working on it.
Wow. Well, you have done a tremendous amount of work for folks like my brother who is disabled, and my mom was passionate about disability issues. And I know you were a tremendous advocate and a support to her and to pushing initiatives through in the city to make sure that the disabled community was a full part of the city, was fully valued, and there was dignity. And so I appreciate that. But do you want to say a little bit about that? Because
when I was in the state legislature, there was a lady that came to me. She was lobbying, and she had a child or two that had some developmental disabilities, and they were concerned with the way the police were handling it. Because sometimes you read every so often what the police have done with somebody who's deaf or who autistic or whatever it may be, and the police don't understand. And so we did push to get some more training for police officers in their academy for people with disabilities. And I think this lady, I have to say, she was really impressive to me because she was there all the time, and I started agreeing with her. And why not? It's
that makes sense.
The police still need more training.
Yeah,
they have a tough job as it is.
Oh, tremendously difficult.
Yeah. But it's something that has always been kind of important to me, and even you learn that a little more so when you're dealing with people with dementia or Alzheimer's. You just got to listen to people, and you see them fiddling around with their money; they don't know what to do, or I know people are going to disagree with this, but there is a point where I would say that I'm part of the privileged group. I had a great wife. I had a great career. Still living in the same house first house I ever owned.
Wow.
Still living in it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, almost 60 years.
You are Tempe through and through, from born and raised in Tempe to school at ASU to teaching at Tempe High, mayor of Tempe. I think the only time you left was for a brief stint in Washington. But other than that, you were there the whole time.
Yeah.
So
that's the first time I ever lived in an apartment, was when I was in DC.
Oh, really? Wow.
I lived at home till when I got married.
So you were still at home all through ASU then?
Yeah. It was a couple blocks away. It was easy.
Oh, that makes it easy. Wow. I wanted to ask you about bringing the Cardinals to Arizona, because that seemed to be a major coup. That I guess the headquarters or the training facility is in Tempe, and
we worked on that.
Tell a little bit more about that, because it's kind of a dream of every city to have a NFL franchise in your hometown, but you guys made it happen.
Of course, they don't play there, but their headquarters, their practice facilities, their office, everything is in Tempe, and it was property that we own. The city, own.
Okay.
So that helped, and I was with them every time they came into town. I was talking with them. Improvisation, yes, but yes, and
yes,
whatever happens to be. And we got along very well. He was kind of a difficult person, but that wasn't my job. My job was to try to make it inviting and make him make his choice. One of the things we did downtown, which was interesting, in Center Point, which was a beautiful development, and Chase has one of their two credit card facilities in Tempe, that facility. And it so happened that the people from Chase that were on that committee came to town to visit. And I said, first of all, the reason they kind of liked Tempe, they came here for a Fiesta Bowl when they were all Notre Dame graduates. And they came here when Notre Dame played. And they had a great time here. So that did help. But
so that was the 88 or 89 championship, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I said to the staff, I said, these people are from New York. They've been with the finest restaurants and so on. So we can't outdo them. Let's just be Tempe. So we rented one of those open buses, and we showed them all. We ate Mexican food. We showed them completely opposite of what you might have done. So they've been to the best places you can afford, you can buy. And so we said, we're going to show them Tempe. And they really, they own the facility. The other place, which gets kind of confused with Tempe, the only other credit card place they have is Tampa. So they Tampa and Tempe, sometimes they get them mixed up.
Yeah, that's a little confusing. That's an interesting point you bring up about just being who you are, being authentic to yourself versus, especially in the age of social media where everybody seems to be comparing themselves to everybody else. So just that authenticity. Say a little bit more about that, how Tempe was authentic, but you were also, it seems like, authentic to yourself throughout your time in public service and teaching.
Yeah. My folks lived in the same house I was raised in until they died. And so I lived in one house there, then the one I'm living in now. Scottsdale is the one that everybody thinks about when they think of coming to the Valley of the Sun. Sure. Because it's got all the resorts and it's got all the restaurants and all the nightlife. And I says, we can never be a Scottsdale. We're just not here. It's a college town and so on. I said, we just have to be our own way. And develop what we have. And so that's what we did with downtown. We didn't tear down all the buildings and have a big facade like Disneyland Main Street or something.
Right.
We just said, we have what we have. And so it's a mix. It's eclectic.
Yeah.
And
and you also did a good job in preserving or creating a lot of arts festivals and kind of community engagement activities that were authentic and really true to place versus trying to be something else. And I appreciate that, whether it's Sister City or just, the Mama Fair, all those things were really part of the fabric of Tempe.
It is. Yeah. And it was interesting. The guy who really put on the Mill Avenue fairs, he was an old hippie. He had a shop downtown. But he's also a real entrepreneur. And he had some shops down there. But he's the one that got a hold of all these artists and started that. Fair. And I have to give you all the credit in the world. He was a real entrepreneur.
So as mayor, when someone like that comes to you with their vision, you just want to get behind it. You want to just say, let's run with that. Is that kind of how you governed?
Yeah. And it's also, you got to help me, but, so the Mama Fair wasn't just put on by the city. These outside people, the Mama, we call it Mill Avenue Merchants Association. They're the ones who got all set up the booths, got the artists and so on. And we provided the infrastructure, the police, the fire, close the streets. You got to help them.
Closed. Yep.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about just the Tempe, at least my perception was growing up there, that there were a lot of immigrant families, first generation immigrant families, mainly from Mexico. And then one of your initiatives was the Sister City program, where Tempe partnered with, back at that time, it was Regensburg and Lower Hutt, New Zealand. And I can't remember the third one.
Skopje, Macedonia.
Skopje, that's right. And I think you may have added some more since that time. But talk about how those international connections enhance the community, how you valued those, lifted those up. Talk a little bit about that side of Tempe and your vision as a leader.
Well, when I was teaching, for some reason, I happened to be kind of gravitate to kids that had accents.
Okay.
Now, we had, this is going way back. There was a foreign exchange program called uh, uh, what was it called? I'll think about it in a second, the name of it.
Sure.
But they required, this was some of the first student exchange programs. They required a city, in Tempe, we only had one high school at the time.
Okay.
To set up a committee to raise money to bring a foreign student over and to send one over. The one that would come over would be here for an academic year. The one that would be sent would be for the summer.
Right.
They had a lot of rules. They didn't want anybody that had allergies. They didn't want anybody that had braces on their teeth because they were afraid of all that stuff.
Wow.
So we, and for a couple of years in a row, we raised the money and they would send us a foreign student over, but they never could find a home for a Tempe student.
Huh.
And I said, no, that's awful. Well, what really did it, I had a student who was selected by this, and he was he was president of the Letterman's Club, president of the National Honor Society, you name it. And he was selected, and we had to send his name in to get it approved in New York. And they rejected him because his parents were divorced and he was living with his mother. And that wouldn't be a good image. I said, wow, that's crazy. That kid went out, he had a full ride scholarship to MIT. He's still living back there. I still contact him. I said,
that's amazing.
We want to have a program where we pick the kid. It has nothing to do with money or knowing a language or academic, whatever. It's how they're going to fit in and be part of the family they're going to live with. And that was our whole attitude. And I'll tell you, we took some gambles because our first city was in Macedonia. At the time, it was part of Yugoslavia, which was behind the Iron Curtain in a way in Europe. And we sent four kids over there, 2 guys and 2 girls. And we had no idea. We talked to people. That's before computers. That's before telephones, any of that stuff. We sent these kids over there, not really knowing what was going to happen.
It's a leap of faith.
One of the persons, her name was Jan. Now, so we sent her over there. Well, they were expecting a male. Jan.
Yawn.
But
Yawn.
I said they were surprised.
That would have been a shocker.
Now, of course, there's the computers and all kinds of ways to communicate. You don't make those mistakes. But it just grew from there. And the kids that came back had a terrific experience. We need to get the parents involved because the kids were. And that's how we did it. Mainly because we wanted to have our own program. The other thing is, let's say Skopje or Regensburg, Germany. Every year we would send people to the same city. And they would come back. In the old days, in the American Field Service, that's what it was called, American Field Service. And what they would do is you'd get 1 year a kid from China, and then you would send a kid to Mexico. Then the next year you get somebody from Japan. Now, if you went to those cities that I just mentioned, you'll see people with ASU sweatshirts on.
Wow, because you've built that over time, that fabric, that relationship.
And I used to tell people, Tempe is the only city with this organization that selects these students for about 4 or 5 weeks, and we pay the airfare and make sure that now they have a place to stay, and that when they come back over here, they're hosted. So it's worked out well.
It was incredibly impactful in my life going to Regensburg as a high school student. It was the first time I'd been overseas, first time away from home, and I didn't know a lick of German either going in. And yet within that summer, I was conversationally fluent. I wouldn't say I was grammatically fluent. Yeah. So it really just opened my worldview tremendously. And I'm very grateful for that opportunity and for your visionary leadership on that program. And I know so many other students feel the same, that just really deeply impacted us.
Well, good.
So, yeah. Talk a little bit about the Fiesta Bowl and how that grew over time from just kind of another bowl, of any sort of bowl. I think initially it was ASU's sort of landing place every postseason to a place that hosted, national championships and is in the rotation of the best and brightest bowls, along with all the parades, which I know, and
Well,
activities and the whole thing. Talk about that and how you grew that.
Things have really changed. And there's going to be change no matter what. But first of all, the Fiesta Bowl is not played in Tempe anymore. It's played
right
at the Cardinal Stadium in Glendale.
Sure.
The parade is in Phoenix.
Right.
We used to have what they call, of course you don't need, I guess people don't do that anymore. We would have a block party the night before the Fiesta Bowl. And they said it'll give the fans from both schools, will have their bands invited to give them a place to go and cheer and get all excited. And that's how we started the block party. Well, little by little, that faded away. It just, the Fiesta Bowl didn't want to sponsor it anymore. And they moved out. People are ungrateful. They forget their history. They forget a lot. Because the Fiesta Bowl was located in Tempe, they had headquarters here. We gave them the property to build their building. Then they moved to Scottsdale. That's where everything is now. Nothing is in Tempe anymore. Nothing is. Yeah.
But even that building block of the Fiesta Bowl, I think, allowed the city to showcase what it could do and eventually host a Super Bowl. So sometimes those seeds we plant, even if they go a different direction over time, sometimes yield other things that are even more impactful, perhaps. I mean, Super Bowl in Tempe, Arizona. Who would have thought that back when downtown Tempe was what it was when you started?
As I said, I think that it brought these people who were looking for headquarters for Chase Bank. That's why they came for the Fiesta Bowl, because all of them happened to be Notre Dame graduates, and Notre Dame was playing, and they came here, and we treated them right, and we liked the place. And when they came out here for the visit, we put them on a tram and drove them around, and didn't feed them the fanciest restaurant we had, which was Marty's probably, which wouldn't compare with the steakhouse in New York.
Right. Yeah. So I say a little bit about your work after retiring from public service with your wife and with the dementia community, because I know your impact. I'm grateful for your impact. The men's groups and the kind of the lunch bunches that you sort of were a part of and spearheaded as your wife dealt with the disease, and you as a caregiver, and I know my dad was in that. And just say a little bit more about that and what's that's meant to you to be able to give back to that. And I know you still do a lot of work in that field.
I do. First of all, I was lucky. My wife said to me one day, "I need to see a doctor." And I said, "Why?" She says, "I can't remember things." I said, "Well, maybe it's hormones or vitamins or something." And so I said, I took her to a psychologist. And pretty soon she said, "We're wasting our money. It's not doing any good. I need to see a doctor." And I said,
okay.
So we went to our primary care doctor, which is unusual for a lot of primary care doctors, who understood a little bit about Alzheimer's, and put her on Aricept. And she would even mention, then he said, "You need to see a neurologist." And I was lucky at the time because Mayo Clinic was in my congressional district. I was in Congress. So he took her right in. And I thought this guy was just terrific. And she'd say, well, after the test and after she'd meet with the doctor, and she'd get all kind of upset and said, "I think I have Alzheimer's." I didn't even know the word. She knew it before I did. And I'm going through drawers and stuff now, emptying dressers and so on, and I'm finding articles that she had cut out about that. So she was kind of aware, but it never changed her personality, which I was really, really happy about. So I said, "No, you don't have Alzheimer's." The doctor said, "All you had is mild cognitive impairment," which is, of course, the prelude to Alzheimer's. And he put her on Aricept. And little by little, and I tell you, again, I started going to the support group. Everybody should go to support group and read, because I'll tell you, there's a lot of things may not apply to you at the time, but they will later. A couple of things. One, here's what happened with Mary Ann. So she wanted to go to the day program. She wanted to go put lipstick on. So she went in the bathroom. I went in there, and it's all over her hair. I said, well, Marianne, I said, where you're going, it won't make any difference. But I made an appointment afterwards to take her to her hairdresser. So the next day, she's going to put her lipstick on again. So I go in the bathroom, and I watch her with the lipstick tube. Now she's going to bite it. So I copy. So you got to be with them. And then we had a clogged drain. And they came out, and she had flushed down a pair of her panties. So now when she goes to the bathroom, what am I doing? I'm in there all the time.
Right.
Then shower. We had an old house, so we had a hot and cold, two handles for hot and cold water in the shower. So I would get them adjusted. She'd get in, and then she'd start playing with them. So then we had the plumber come out, and we put a single nozzle on her.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I found out she wasn't really washing herself. She just had the faucet on. So now you're washing her. And people don't realize, people would say, how'd you know what to do? And I said, well, how'd you know what to do as a parent? Sometimes you do the right things, and sometimes you say, no. And I tell people, I would never be a caregiver the second time the way I was the first time. You know? And I don't think you raise your kids that way either. You know, the what do you call them?
The pacifier. Yeah.
You know, your first kid, you drop them, you pick it, and you boil it in water. And the second kid, you take it and you go underneath your arm.
You're right.
And sometimes you make mistakes, and sometimes you overdo it, but it's little by little. And then going to support groups and reading a lot of stuff. But I'll tell you what, I tried something once. Marianne was where your mom was, at a residential place for Alzheimer's. And I would go every morning, because I'm retired now. So I go every morning and have breakfast with her. And there was a lady sitting at another table, which I got to know all of them, and it helped them out a little bit.
Sure.
And the food was sitting in front of her, and she was crying. And I said, I don't remember her name. I said, okay, Sally, can I help you? And she said, yes. Where's my husband? And I said, where do you think he is? Said, I think he's in heaven. I said, that's exactly where he is. She quit crying. She was happy the next day. And you hear that phrase all the time with Elsa, you have to get into their world. Well, that's the way with everything. Students, you know, every student is not going to be an A student or a political scientist, but what do they want to do? What's their goal? What are they trying? They're trying to get out of government. What they're trying to do.
Right.
So you have to get in their world, and then the as I say, the improvisation. That's so important in communicating, because you never interrupt anybody. You never say you're wrong, and you say yes, but or you may be right.
It really is.
It really
is.
And in dealing with people, let's say with dementia or have some mental problems, it doesn't matter what they say anyway. You know, you can never argue with them. You're never going to win. You're never going to invent. And people try that.
Right.
Said, that's wrong.
Right.
I could have lied to that
lady
and said, well, he went to the bathroom, he'll be back later. Or he went to the store and be back. You just say, you get in their world. Where do you think he is? He said, I said, that's where he is. And that was it. So
it is. As you look back on all the various things you've done, what are you most proud of as a person?
Well, I think I was successful. And I say that not because of winning elections, but as a politician. I brought people together. People became proud of Tempe. I didn't do anything that was illegal or immoral. You just you do what's expected of them. If you win these offices, it's an expectation. That's why I can't believe some of these people today. There's an expectation of how to act.
Sure.
And you try to do that. Not because you want to get reelected, mainly because, as I just said earlier, the gratification comes in the doing, not in the results, not in just winning elections. And I'll tell you, if you want to say lucky, nobody wants to get defeated. But my last election for Congress, I got defeated. But what was good about that, I couldn't have served because of Marianne. She was too far gone. So it was, you don't want to get beat, but it was time to go because I wouldn't have been able to serve. And again, she was so important to all my life, everything I did as a teacher, and as a politician. I said she was the perfect politician's wife. She never got mad at anybody. She pitched in and did things completely. She was a business teacher, and so secretarial was her area. So she did all the typing and the running off things, and yeah, she was great.
Wow. So you were very blessed. Very blessed.
Absolutely, I'm blessed, and I say that all the time.
Yeah,
I was blessed as a teacher, as a politician. I've got good friends. I've got family that's great. And a lot of my friends.
Say a little bit about how proud you were when your son was elected mayor of Tempe. How excited were you about that?
I was very excited. You're nervous about it because I don't know what people might have expected because he was my son.
Sure.
His personality is different. His experiences have been different. And many people would say, Terry, he's not you. I know that. That's
right.
He's got his own way of doing things. But I was very proud of him. Absolutely.
Wow. Well, I think you have hundreds of sons and daughters beyond your biological family, from your students to the people you impacted at City Hall, as well as in the halls of Congress and at the State House. And I'm just so grateful that you took time to share some of your wisdom with us. And I know you've been blessed, but you have also blessed many others many times over. So I want to thank you very much and just appreciate the time you've given me today.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me today on the Super Pumped podcast. If you enjoyed today's show as much as I did, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app and tell your friends about the show so others can find and benefit from the Super Pumped community. And finally, to put the ideas from today's show into action, visit us at superpumped.com to view the show notes, book a complimentary consultation, or take our free business launch readiness assessment. Keep well, and I'll see you next time.